It's Q4 of the event, which is apt for the time of year. And I know everyone's probably got loads of questions for that last panel, but don't all bugger off because here we come. Right. So it's been a lot of tech chat, and now it's all about humans and how humans and tech come together. And I've got a cracking panel here. And Diane Young has joined us from the Drum. And we're in their venue, the Drum Labs, which is for hire for anyone who loves it as much as we do. Right. Hello. Right. I'm very excited for this panel because I've got WeTransfer here. I've got Emma from a business that looks at client relationships, and I've got Oystercatchers as an intermediary. What an amazing set. Also, we lost Oya Mustafa last night. And why do we lose Oya? Because she's in a pitch. At exactly this point in time, she is pitching. She's the BD 100 Business Developer of the Year. The exciting thing is I get to use some of her sound bites that she insisted that I put in to this session. So for a little bit of time, I might be Oya. And Oya would start off and say something like, people don't buy services. They buy people. They buy trust. That's the door opener. So say hello to everyone. Tell them who you are and why are you excited.
Hello, everyone. My name's Evelyn Oluwole, and I'm a Senior Sales Director at WeTransfer. We work with brands like Apple, MailChimp, Chanel, pretty much all the luxury brands. And what we're doing is we're helping them tell their bold stories in a creative space that's clutter-free. But beyond that, I am absolutely on a mission to change and decode the art of follow-up. I genuinely believe that follow-up is the thing that's going to get you your business. It's a cheat code to success. And I'm really excited to be on the panel. I might be taking some notes because I'm sure I'm going to be learning as well. But I really just want to, be part of the conversation to talk about business development and the fact that it's really not about chasing. It is about connections and it is about the human touch. Thank you.
Lovely. And Emma?
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. I'm Emma from Verity, Relationship Intelligence. So we've spent about 20 years tracking client agency relationships. We measure them, we'll benchmark them, and then we help agency teams drive forward, create the change they need to do to recognize maybe account ambition growth and agency growth. So I'm really excited to be here today because I'm going to share with you a lot of the data insight of what clients really want from agencies now as well as in the future, right? And if we think about growth, we've got to think about it from this sense of two ways. If it's a bucket, you don't want all of the brilliance of what all you BD people are doing, all these account wins, all of the pitch wins. You don't want that falling out a year later, 6 months later, in that kind of leaky bucket sense of account loss. So I'm going to come at it from two angles today. How can you get and really drive what clients want early on so then you don't have any leaky buckets going on?
Nice. I love it when you talk about the leaky bucket. Annie?
Yeah, I'm Annie. I'm Associate Client Director at Oystercatchers. And Oystercatchers is a marketing consultancy focusing on intermediary services. So we bring the agency and the brand together and hopefully build that for a long-term partnership. And I'm very excited to be here today because I'm often there at the start of these relationships. So I can see when the chemistry really wins and when it kind of flops. And I'm at the advantage point between brands and agencies. So I'm really excited to just hear the other perspectives on the panel today.
Bingo. Love it. All right. So we're going to kick off by talking about human connection. Why it is so crucial in business development. And there's a whole load of myths around about, the human side of things. And I said I'd talk on behalf of Oya. People that know Oya, right? She's a poet and she puts poetry out on LinkedIn. And I'm going to read this from her because it's quite deep. Relationships aren't just about smiling on Zoom or showing up on the day of a pitch. There she is in a pitch today. They're about credibility, clarity, and care. The tip of the iceberg is what often is measured at the pitch itself, and that's forgotten if not converted. Business developers exist in the ocean, and it takes human connection in its truest form to be able to do it, not only when we're on a roll, but most importantly, during the lows. Annie, follow that.
How do I follow that? Yeah, I think there's, human connection can be seen as, being likable and charismatic. And while that's important, I do think that it's about trust and building trust. And you build trust through vulnerability or transparency and competence. So, yeah, I think that's an important part of.
Cool. And Evelyn?
I think it's really important that, and especially from my experience working on agency sides, that you have to have shared curiosity. And the reality is that that is not going to happen via Zoom. Zoom is excellent, it's available, and it's convenient. But in order for you to kind of get into the heart of your client, who is a human being, you want to be able to get close to them to understand what they're going through, what their challenges are, what are the KPIs that they want to achieve. And that isn't going to happen virtually, right? That happens by nurturing relationships, by wanting to understand them, by getting to know them. And so that human touch is really, really vital and crucial, especially at the early set of a relationship.
And given that we're an Oya down on this panel, I will chip in with a couple of like ad hoc questions just to keep us all on our toes. Something that came to me actually just thinking about it, right? Through COVID, we all went online. Now, like everyone wants to be back in a room. Case in point, here we all are, jam-packed in here. And we talk about like Zoom doesn't allow the personality to come across. But, at those opening meetings, at the pitches, are we all back in the physical room now? Like just quickly across the three of us. Are we back in the room, or is it still in the Zoom, or is it a hybrid mix of all of it?
Oh, no, it's definitely back in the room. Well, we try to. When we run our processes, we definitely want everybody in the room. Obviously, you can get the client last minute saying, sorry, I need to dial in, which is so unfair on the agency because then it's a hybrid model. These agencies have been rehearsing. But that's a point, actually, rehearsing. And a client can really tell in a room when, this agency hasn't rehearsed or they don't usually work together. And they've called in all their big senior marketers to come in and, put on the show. It's grating when there's no cohesion between the team. So it's very important to, think about that when you're pitching. But yeah, creativity, creative ideas, strategic input, even tech and tools can win a pitch, but it's the human connection and sort of the client service that really sustains it long term.
Anyone else?
I think we're dealing in a reality of hybrid, right? So it's definitely like in real life is obviously always going to be better, right? We can read each other's body language, we've got all of the cues, but say you've got a client who's based, up in Manchester and you're an agency in London, that's not always going to be realistic. So yes, obviously prioritizing, the amount of agencies that don't have travel budgets. They're like, oh, well, we don't have that ticket to go to Paris to do X, or, the train tickets, really simple things. It sounds so silly, but like obviously prioritize meeting in real life, but then use the connection, use that ability you've got with the cameras on. The amount of agencies that tell us, well, my client won't turn the camera on. Okay, there's an engagement issue, right? So we've got to make the most of what is the reality of a hybrid world, I think, and also to listening is one of the best skills that everyone's got in the room, right? You're all awesome listeners. That wouldn't be in the jobs we're in otherwise. But I think we've got to really tune into what is that client behaving? What are they showing? What's the body language? All of those things. So you've got to work pretty hard to do it on Zoom, on Teams. But that's the reality of the world we're living in.
Cool. And Evelyn?
For me, working at WeTransfer, speaking to a client, they already know about what WeTransfer is. They're using it. But when we talk about WeTransfer advertising, they're like, oh, you do advertising? Like, yeah, the beautiful canvas, that's advertising. And so we have to go into the room. And because I'm dealing with agencies like the Omnicom Group, WPP, most of them are in the office, right? So they are saying, you want to have a lunch and learn, you want to have a meeting with me, you want to meet with my client and do a creative session, you're going to have to come into the room. And so for us, we absolutely have to be in the room. And that's where we get to win the business.
Cool. Thanks for letting me throw that one in. Right. So that's the human side of things, right? But Emma, look, you're queen of the data. What does the data say?
Okay. Let's think about it first a bit like marriage guidance, right? So agency team, client team, won that pitch, you've come together. what the data does is it creates a honeymoon period, right? So the clients are on this kind of real brilliant, we're really excited to get into the execution side of things. So they're in a very excitement heavy, lots of optimism. So the client satisfaction rating is actually quite high at that point. What happens within 6 months is a dip. Okay. It's the operational becomes the relational. There's all these things, these tiny things that go wrong. Something executional, a process. And because you haven't built that long-lasting trusted relationship yet, it quickly becomes relational. It becomes quite a lot more toxic. So I think what's the key thing here is a psychological contract, right? Your client and you have no idea the expectations you've got of each other until something gets broken, unless you're surfacing them really early on. And I think there's such a responsibility and a brilliance in what BD teams can do to set the strong foundations for a relationship by surfacing a lot of those expectations. How are you going to work with each other? What's the decision making? All those things that I'm sure you cover and surface and encourage teams to do really well. But it is the operational detail, the attention to detail, the efficiency, the timeliness. Those things are so potent when they're experienced negatively. The thing that then pulls it back up and out, which is the data trend we see. So you think about it, honeymoon period, down we go and up we come, is relationship, right? It's that intent to improve. I can see you're improving, you're listening really well, and you're building understanding in my business. It's not you've put in a new process or you've hired somebody else. It's the intent of which you've got to show that care and, early signs of partnership, all those relational things. So that's sort of number one when it comes to new relationships. Sorry, I keep doing this. The other thing is that if we look at the data, and this is global data, this is all different types of networked agencies, independents, lots of different sectors. Relational, how you work with a client will drive much higher ratings than what you do. So we code 2 very simple questions into 91 different themes. We split them, relationship, so everything with how you're working, the spirit, the supportiveness, partnership, collaboration, and then the transactional of what you do. But we're working with an order effect, right? So whilst the relationship stuff drives higher ratings, if there's anything wrong with what you do, it's not flawless, it's got errors, it's late, the quality of the creative isn't brilliant. It doesn't matter how proactive, supportive, collaborative your team are, okay? Because you're not fundamentally delivering the basics. But the work alone will not drive and sustain a strong relationship. If you ask me what the biggest green right now, so the top 3 things for a UK creative agency, creative work, obviously, in green, but it doesn't necessarily drive really high ratings unless it's accompanied by collaboration, supportiveness, and partnership. UK media, the biggest green right now is talent. That's the most frequently mentioned positive, followed by supportiveness, partnership. Media planning and what you do and effectiveness is right down at number 6 or 7. So it's a human connection, it's people driven, and it's all about the relationship is the thing that makes the difference. So my last point, if it's all right, just to make on that one.
Absolutely fine, because I am just soaking this up.
As teams, you've got to invest in your people, right? Because every single account manager, account exec, account director, whoever they are, you need them to have brilliant relationship skills. And I think that's the real sort of superpower of every agency is going to have their own way of doing it. But you've got to be nurturing that talent. And in a very increasingly transactional world, all of what we've talked about with, hybrid and Zoom, it's not easy, but invest in the people is a really important part.
Nice. Annie, what about the chemistry side of things, like what you see?
Well, sort of building on what you were saying, that beginning point is so important, and the way that in a chemistry session or throughout the pitch, some of the boring stuff is really brilliant, like talking about the ways of working, showing you're thinking ahead. You're not treating this as a sales pitch, you're treating it as a first workshop. You've done the work before, you know a bit about the client, you're giving more than they expect, and that goes a long way. I think that's a great start for chemistry. The other point is obviously the people in the room. So you can do as much as you want with the ways of working, the organization side of things. But if as I mentioned earlier, if the chemistry isn't right between the people, the clients can feel it. And yeah.
What's the unspoken question that is always on the tip of the tongue?
Well, I guess it's kind of like, can we actually work with these people? You know, we're going to see them every week. Do we want to? You know, they've delivered great work, but I just don't really get a good vibe with them. And as part of our evaluation criteria, actually, one of the questions we always ask is, how excited are you to work with this agency? And that's sort of holistic. So it obviously focuses on the work, but at the core of that, it is the empathy, it's the emotional intelligence, it's the vibe. Yeah.
And that gets fed back to the agency, obviously.
Obviously.
Yeah. Nice. Brilliant stuff. Okay, Evelyn, the follow-up queen, totally obsessed. I didn't know you till 3 weeks ago. Now I'm totally obsessed with your LinkedIn posts. You are the self-proclaimed follow-up queen. Look, some relationships just don't, or, you know, even won't work no matter how hard you try, right? So what are the main causes of a failed agency or brand relationship? And importantly, how do we know when to call it a day and just stop?
Absolutely. So working at WeTransfer now, but prior to WeTransfer, I was working agency side. It was hard. And it was hard because you're dealing with so many different agencies, right? And there's so much competition out there, and it's actually quite difficult to cut through. But the reality is, and what I learned certainly of working on agency side, is that not every brand is going to be your client. And I know that it's a hard truth. We're all out here to make money. We want to do great jobs. We want to create great projects. But the reality is not every brand is going to be your client. And there's a number of reasons as to why that is the case. It could be a misalignment of values, of priorities. It could be there's no internal champion. Most of us are seen as wild cards. When we go out to, say, Spotify and say, we can do something great, they're like, yeah, cheers, you're great. But like, I'm going to stick to the traditional agency that I've been working with for 20 years, right? And so there's obviously that element that means that you can't, it's a non-starter. Or it could be that it's a price sensitivity. What you want to do versus what they want to pay is completely at odds. And then also it's just that the time is not right. And you have to be fine with that. But what I always say is that you have to evaluate those businesses as a pause, right? So if it's not working, if you can see that there's no alignment, you take a pause. And pausing means, it doesn't mean it's a no. It means that you're really just taking time out to kind of evaluate what they're doing, to see maybe if further down the line there might be an opportunity. And the thing that I always say is that it's really about nurturing those relationships, actually caring about those clients, because we're working with people and the clients want to do good work. They want to create great work, right? But you also want to create good work with your peers. You want everyone within the business to work. When I was working on agency side, we would go through a scorecard. We would check the pitch. Is it worthwhile? Can we do the work? Yes, we can. Tick, tick, tick. Let's go forward. And then we'll very quickly go into a tissue session. So many people do tissue sessions, say 3 weeks after they receive the brief. We will do it like literally 7 days later. The reason for that is we want to engage with the client to say, this is what we think it looks like. How do you feel? Look at their eyes. You know, like, what's the feedback that we're getting? Are they like, oh my goodness, this is a waste of time? Like, are they engaged? Do they want to work with us? Do they want to go on the journey? And from that tissue session, we take feedback and we say to ourselves, should we be working with this client? Is this the right client for us? And I know, as I said earlier, it can be difficult when there's money on the table, but you got to think about the longer game. Are we going to do great work? Is it going to be brilliant work? Are they going to work with us again? Someone mentioned earlier that a client stays with you for about 3 years. Is this a client that's going to stay with us for 3 years? Because if you can't answer those questions really from the onset, then you do need to have a pause. And I say pause because I don't want to say stop, because I think a client that's not yes today can definitely be yes tomorrow.
And you say BD isn't begging, right? I like that. This line, go on, you say it.
So I believe business development is not, it's definitely not begging. It's about building relationships, right? For those of us that work in BD, and even at WeTransfer, I do a lot of business development. There's this stigma that we're going down, knocking down doors and begging everyone and anyone to work with us. And that's simply not the case. If you do business development well, you do it strategically, you win the right businesses, you build the right relationships, and then you have long-term partners. And that's what I believe business development is.
Yes, that's it. And if Oya were here, she'd be now chipping in and going, give me that mic and swearing. human connection isn't about chasing, it's about resonance. If it's not mutual, it's not right. And here she goes, ice it or move on completely. That's Anoya Mustafa. Yeah. What about red flags from you, Annie? I'll come to you, Emma. I know you want to say something.
Yeah, I think a red flag is value misalignment, but it must be so hard, you know, when you've started a pitch and you're into it, and you know, halfway through you're not feeling it, you're not really aligned with the client, but you've already put the resource there. But the client sees it. The client sees when you're not aligned with their brand, when you're not aligned with what their business is. So I think it's important to just be aware of that and be able to walk away and be able to say no, or have some systems in place beforehand. So one agency I know has a scorecard before when a pitch comes in, and the pitch team all score the project, and if they're below a certain threshold, they won't go ahead with the project or with the pitch. And I know that comes from a place of luxury. Not everyone's got loads of pitches to choose from, but that saves resource, and it also saves your company culture, because it's a big hit when you don't win a pitch, and especially if you're not really feeling it. So that's one point. And then another thing is, I was on a recent pitch, and an agency in the final pitch had pulled together a relationship charter, and they gave that to the clients, and it just sort of, put out everything that they expect of the client and what the client should expect of the agency. And that was a really powerful thing, because further down in the relationship, as you're saying, when it's a leaky bucket, you've got this document that you can refer back to, and then you can course correct. So I think that was a really, powerful tool.
It's two brilliant things of what you said, and echoing what you said, Evelyn, about partnership. Like, that is very adult to adult behaviour, right? And I think the agencies that are doing that, they go in on a basis of not the client's the critical parent, and they've gone into adaptive child mode. Because often if we think about the whole carousel of pitching, the dynamics are very much on the client side, right? It's like, which agency do I want? Oh, sorry, I'm massively simplifying this, but who's going to give me this price? Who's going to do what? And there's an energy that can come from an agency of, I'm slightly desperate for your business. I'm going to say yes to all these things that I probably should be saying no to in order to get it in the door. And I think that having things like pitch charters, entering it into with a kind of real partnership philosophy to start with, is just so important, because if you're in that adaptive child mode from the get-go, you entrench that critical parent behaviour, and you will agree to things that you can't fundamentally deliver on, that are not going to set you up for success. And I think what we see is that often in the relationships that are dipping, 3 rounds of a red rating, so we're talking over a 9-month period to a 12, statistically that account won't be in the agency the following year. So if it's in the red, my observation of spending time with account teams can often be that they are saying yes to a lot of things they should be saying no to, and they've gone slightly into adaptive child. So I think if you can enter a pitch from the start of, I appreciate, exactly what you said, it's not always the luxury of being able to turn things down, but at least to be able to go in stating what you need, client briefing, clarity, the decision making, whatever it is, but you go in co-contracting, and then you're surfacing a lot of the expectations, and getting out, hopefully, what will be all those operational bumps in the road are then surfaced. Because I think it's a bit like people don't get divorced because they stack the dishwasher wrong, right? It's not that one thing that causes it, but it has a relational knock-on. And that's the thing, is that operational thing just becomes relational incredibly quickly. So how the team show up and their behaviour is really important.
Yeah, and whenever you do feel those moments where there's a bit of tension or it doesn't feel like it's going right, the client's probably feeling that too. They just haven't got round to addressing it. So if you can be proactive and you can call in and have those regular check-ins, it just shows transparency, and then keeps building that trust and that competence. And you're just speaking to each other like adults and not letting anything, wallow.
What are the top client complaints that you see?
So number 3 is strategy. Number 2 is efficiency, and number 1 is timeliness. So they're very transactional, right? They need a lot of diagnosis, obviously. Sometimes those adapted child behaviours have caused the timeliness problem because the agency couldn't possibly deliver on what the client wanted, so it was going to be late. Could be that your resources are too stretched. There's loads of different reasons. But it's the body language of all of those is what equates to trust. So the agencies that then get all of those right or don't have those, sort of red areas have got much higher relational praise. So I think if you think about efficiency, that's as much about what is the agency process. Have we kind of fostered that onto the client? Have we listened enough to how they work, their connection with their finance departments, procurement, all the rest of it? You've taken all that stuff into account. And also efficiency is actually as a topic has changed quite a bit as to how clients are thinking about it. It used to be very ways of working process. It's now also linked to relational efficiency. So this feels really efficient. I love collaborating. This is the way, we're driving a really efficient way of working. So again, it's relational efficiency, tech-driven efficiency, ways of working. But yeah, top 3 negatives, all transactional.
We've got about 10 minutes left, so we're gonna do a quick sum up on the tech side of things in a minute. But get your questions ready, right? This is your chance to talk about anything that we've talked about here. Lastly, so that's the human side, right? Lots of lovely human side of things, but today is all about humans and tech working together. And I had sort of in my head earlier that the future is all about humans and techs and agents in perfect harmony. How does it benefit in our roles of what we do right now? What can't it do? Maybe Emma.
I might answer the question from the angle of what clients are expecting as well, if that's okay. So we have a future fit index, right? We went out to about 10,000 marketers and asked, how confident are you in the agency's ability to deliver on your future needs? And what was really interesting, what came out of that was obviously lots of clients going, lazy ask AI was literally put down, or that's going to mean that I can save X, Y, Z on agency spend. It was quite a transactional way of talking about it. But what did come out was that there's about a 25% gap in confidence, right? Between what a client would rate an agency now and how confident they feel that you are in their future abilities. And a couple of things driving that is they want more strategic vision to help with the chunky challenges that they feel they're not getting. Sometimes because agencies have ripped out a lot of senior talent and replaced them with a lot of executional doers, which is a watch out. So they want more strategic vision. They want way more innovation and creativity than they're getting. And they want the human side to help them navigate the AI tech and tools. It's not, I just want more AI. It's, I need the people to help me work out how to use it properly. So again, it comes back to the drum of, banging the human touch message, right? In that it's not AI versus human. That's a kind of thing from, I think, a couple of years ago that we got to drop. This is AI plus human. This is AI enhanced by relationships.
Yeah, nice. Love it. And Evelyn.
So when it comes to AI, I've just got to say I'm absolutely loving it. It has literally changed my life, both personally and professionally. But what I will say is that when it comes to how I use it in my day-to-day, it's excellent with doing the work that I don't want to do, but I absolutely do need to do, which is the data analysis, which is doing the deep dive into understanding the potential clients. What does their vision statement say? How does it align with our business and what we do? It does it really, really quickly, much faster than I could ever do it. And actually, it can do it really accurately if you get the prompts right. However, what AI doesn't have is it doesn't have soul. It's never going to have soul, right? It's never going to be in the room, in a Zoom room or with a call where the client is giving me the eye that you're doing things wrong, things are about to go left. What are you going to do about it? AI is not going to help me, right? And so for that reason, I think unless we're ever going to be dealing with robots, which by the looks of it, I can't see any robots in the room, I don't think we need to worry about it. And I don't think we need to think that AI is going to be the thing that's going to make the change. There's still going to be room for human beings, right? There's still going to be room for that human touch, the human relationships. And I think what we need to get better at is understanding how we can use AI more effectively, because AI, as it stands, is only using 2% of its capability. In 10 years' time, it's going to look completely different. So the earlier we get on understanding what it looks like and how to use it and use it effectively in our day-to-day jobs, the better we'll get out of it.
Brilliant. And this event today has really helped. I mean, me being a technophobe, slowest adopter in the world, I'm coming back. This is magic. Annie.
Yeah, I mean, as we know, tech is such an enabler, but it is the human touch that still wins, as Oya would say. It's people who still buy people. So I use it for efficiencies, as everybody else does. But actually, I feel like AI could even get in the way of building relationships. It's so easy to sort of sit behind your computer, get behind your emails, behind the automation. In that time that you save, try and reinvest that into, going out, meeting people, or thinking differently, and spending that time on how can we build a relationship in a way that I haven't thought about before. But yeah, essentially, it's the emotional intelligence, the empathy, the trust. That's what's the irreplaceable bit, and that's the competitive advantage.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I know that Oya will be right with you on that one. Tech saves time. It doesn't earn trust. It doesn't build connections in the same way. At that point, do we have any questions? Come on. Right. From our point of view, what have you learned today? What's been a big takeout for you today? Anyone?
I think it's the power of listening, right? I think we heard a lot this morning coming out of the panels. I think what Amanda was saying, what Stephen was saying, like really echoing that importance of driving the understanding of your client, and however you can do that to speed that up through various AI, various tools, platforms that we've heard from today. I think that's the key thing, is enhancing your understanding and your listening to your client to then make what you do more effective, and hopefully, obviously, grow your business at the same time. And that's, for me, is one massive takeout from today.
For me, there was something that Amanda said that completely blew my mind, which was along the lines of going back to basics. I think with AI and everything that's happening in our world today, we think everything needs to now be complex, and it doesn't need to be. I think we need to go back to the drawing board of the fact that the outreach playbook it's not broken. It's still effective. It's still working. And I'm certainly going to take out cold calling, because I don't do it anymore. I'm used to like communicating via emails. Let's meet up face to face, but I don't get on the phone. And actually, why are we not getting on the phone? Like people are back in the office, people are working. We should get back on the phone. So that's some of the takeouts. And then Amanda said something about the CMOs, the move in the CMOs. I was like, is info. That is good insight. Of course, if there's a new CMO in a new company, what does that mean? There's going to be change. And for me, that's my signal to trigger in and get in with that CMO. So that's some of my takeouts.
Annie, you want to chip in with me?
Yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot. I think it's very important to put as much time into nurturing relationships as you do into the doing. So we can talk so much about AI and spending all this time learning how to use it and getting bogged down, but it's the doing that actually counts and drives new business. Yeah.
And I think, I'm so old school. Yeah, like I said, I'm coming back through, and it's great to hear that today the old school methods they're still being given, well, not even just a shout out. They're coming back, right? So old school methods still work. The art of closing should not be forgotten, right? Because all of this tech, AI, relationship building, human touches only gets you so far, right? If you're in the pitch scenario, and as we said earlier, even having the opportunity to talk to a prospect is a success. You've still got to close something, or otherwise it's all worthless. Although not worthless, because the relationship is being built and something might come in the future. And I, for one, have had wins with clients that I met 10 years ago. You just got to keep going, and it's all about building friendships with people, and going into things with thinking there's nothing other than just building a relationship here, and then just seeing naturally what might come along. If nobody else has any other questions to ask at this point, do we? Yay! Question. Did everyone hear that question? Yeah.
Very good question. I think I touched on it a little bit before, but really do your homework on the client. If it's a chemistry session, don't just go in there and do a sales pitch. Really treat it like a working session. Give them confidence that you see yourself as a long-term partner. I think that's a key point. Yeah.
I think there's also maybe a brilliance of packaging up that makes your agency really unique. And I think that idea of whether you're, merchandising back to your prospects about your client sat data, nicely visualized, whatever it might be, but that you will have a unique way of holding those relationships and of being in that pitch. And I think, it's that sort of sea of sameness message that was coming out earlier, I think is a really good one. But just really knowing what is your superpower, what's the relationship superpower, the chemistry superpower you bring.
Yeah, what's your superpower and how does that tie into the business objective? Like, how does that relate to what the client's there to do? Make it all relatable rather than just saying your creds. Pull out different examples and relate them back to the client's need and ask, and that goes a long way.
Any other questions? All right. I would love to thank my panel. Evelyn, Emma, Annie, thank you so much.